I hope there are sunnier days ahead.
This division has so many question marks, and the next team is the Titans, because we're only a year removed from when the Titans, once they lost a playoff game against the Bengals, they were the number one seed for the AFC, and it's hard to even remember that was the case. Like Peter Skoronski comes in as the first round pick when a lot of people felt they were going to go quarterback column. For me, it just seems like it's Derrick Henry. It's Derrick Henry. We do our utmost to protect on the offensive line, see what we can get out of him. Like I thought at this stage, Ryan Tannehill. Let's not forget they picked the quarterback last year in the third round who had some, played a number of games last season. Clearly wasn't really ready for the NFL. Again, he's still there, but you have to go Will Levis in the second round. So you don't do a lot in free agency. Serviceable players like Sean Murphy Bunting coming in from the Bucs. We had a good time there, won a Super Bowl. But again, it just seemed like a team that's drifting, and they brought a new GM. I thought they might have made a bigger play on quarterback in terms of Tezzy going after Trey Lance. I kind of spoke about that. Like, where are you on this team? For me, if I was a Titans fan, I'd be underwhelmed by another offseason.
Yeah, I would be too. The only thing I suppose that would give me a little bit of hope is Mike Vrabel is obviously a very good head coach, but there are huge things to be concerned about, especially for this season. I think the new general manager has done a decent job in so much as he moved on a lot of, the older players who just weren't performing. But pre-Woods wasn't, Taylor Lewan, it was the law of diminishing returns. So ultimately it made sense to move on from those guys. But we sit here and again, what are the Titans? They are, as you point out, Ryan Tannehill is starting QB and Derrick Henry. But how many times can you go to the well with Derrick Henry? How much can you really put on him year after year after year? And obviously, look, we saw Malik Willis came in, then Malik Willis was out. There's obviously kind of no faith in him there. It's already kind of been talks of they might just move on from him. So we'll have to see when Will Levis might come in. They spent not huge money, but decent money bringing in Andre Dillard, who is a guy who, was under the best offensive line coach in the league in Philadelphia, a guy who's seen off 3 head coaches there, and they recognize he's so good they've kept him around, and he couldn't develop him. So I don't know who the Titans are. Their identity seems still rooted in Derrick Henry. But again, I go back, 3 teams last year had rushers who went over 1,500 yards. None of those teams made the playoffs.
Conor, Traylon Burks was the first round pick last year, and I suppose he never set the ground running last season. I wonder if it was there lofty expectations, bearing in mind they just moved on from Antonio Brown, expecting him to come in and take up the slack, and never really materialized. But the offense never really got going last season. There were so many games that they should have won, they lost, and scrappy games. In for large part, it's a scrappy division. It's hard to know what to expect from this team. And genuinely, we can look at all the teams in the league, and we have a reasonably good kind of prognosis of what we expect. Genuinely, I couldn't tell you where this team's going to be come this time next year.
Yeah, I have to say, and maybe I'm calling this on myself and it says more about me, but they're one of those teams that I was thinking, who the hell are their wide receivers? It's kind of hard to identify them. I had to look it up, I must confess, and it takes me back to that sliding doors moment for them, which was trading AJ Brown. Who does that? You would talk about general managers making moves to turn a team into a Super Bowl contender. The Titans made a move to turn the Eagles into a Super Bowl contender and trading them AJ Brown. And you could see it's one of those great NFL films moments when you captured Mike Vrabel's reaction to that move. He was not a happy camper, and that lit the fuse on the end of that GM's career. And it raises the question, as Colin quite rightly asked, who are they now? Where are they going? What are they going to want out of this season? You'd wonder, should they fold their hand and start again at quarterback? We thought they might have done that. Maybe they didn't see who they wanted in this draft, and maybe they're looking ahead to what is expected again to be a very promising crop next year. And arguably, at least as far as we can see and tell at this juncture, perhaps a more talented crop for the upcoming draft than there was this time around. Ryan Tannehill is, of course, recovering from injury. Are we going to see diminishing marginal returns there? He's taken quite a bit of punishment. Skoronski, as you said, a much sought after draft pick to strengthen that offensive line. But they're asking a lot of Mike Vrabel to take this back on the road. Yet all of that said, you mentioned quite rightly they were the AFC's number 1 seed just 2 seasons ago. So, in one sense, they've fallen a long way. In another sense, there's still a tight core, and there's still a chippiness about them, and there's still, a competitiveness about them that will serve them well. And as we've said for other teams in this division, you probably wait around 5 or 6 games and see where you are, and then we'll see whether they really are all about sticking with Tannehill and running it back one more time, or whether this is just a bridge season before they make a move next year.
Colin, you have a point before we move on to the Jags?
Yeah, I suppose we're rightly talking about them as the number 1 seed, but that season was even where they were, that they were so strange, right? Because they started off wobbly, and then they went on this incredible run in kind of late like mid-September to mid-November, where they were just unbeaten, and they hammered the Chiefs. And I think they'd beaten the Saints in mid-November, and they were sitting at 8-2. And then they had another wobble. Now, they got it back a little bit at the end of the season, but they're the number 1 seeds. But the decline or the fall off seemed to start that November, and then obviously against the Bengals, things really fell apart. Tannehill was in some ways he's sometimes too honest, right? Because remember, he talked about how that game had impacted him, and it still kind of gave him nightmares. When Malik Willis came in last year, and he was asked, "Oh, are you going to help choose this guy?" And he's like, "It's not my job," even though he had seen Joe Flacco make the same mistake in Denver, and just say, "Yeah, sure," and then it moves on. So again, like, this isn't just like one bad or one down year last year. To me, this is kind of coming for 18 months. And the reason they moved off of, and had Mike Herndon on, and well worth for anyone kind of interested in this division or the Titans, well worth listening to Mike's podcast. He was really good when he was on. And he talked about, like, the reason they moved off the GM was the fact that the draft picks over the previous years just weren't working out. So it was all kind of stitched together, and those stitches are coming very, very undone.
Let's not forget that playoff game. They broke record numbers in terms of how many sacks they got on Joe Burrow, and yes, somehow found a way not to win